Picture this. You're scrolling through your phone when your dad casually mentions he's been texting your boyfriend. Not just once, regularly. Swapping stories, asking questions, building an actual friendship behind your back. That's exactly what happened to Olandria. And when she went live and spilled that detail, everything people thought they knew about her and Nic from Love Island completely shattered. Because here's the thing. You don't text someone's parent unless it's serious. You definitely don't have their dad writing for you, hyping you up, waiting to meet you in person. That's not showmance behavior. That's not Love Island USA season content. That's real life bleeding into the cameras whether they're rolling or not. And what Olandria revealed during that live stream didn't just surprise fans. It completely rewrote the narrative around Nic Olandria. The framed photo sitting next to her grandmother's picture, the private family group chats, the way Nic's entire circle fights to make sure she gets paid, the texts between Nic and her father that she didn't even know were happening. Every single detail pointed to one undeniable truth. This connection runs deeper than anyone watching Love Island could have predicted. Way deeper. But before we get into how Nic basically became best friends with her dad before they even met, and why that one detail has everyone rethinking everything,
real quick, if you're invested in Ace, Nicolandria, Nic and Olandria, Taylor, Sierra, or literally anything Love Island Hoodow related from the dating show that had us all in a chokehold, do me a solid and smash that subscribe button. Because trust me, by the end of this video, you're going to want updates on where this is headed next. All right, let's get back into it.
So Olandria goes live. Standard stuff at first, fans asking questions, laughing about random moments, the usual vibe. But then halfway through, she drops a bomb so casual it almost flew under the radar. She mentioned that Nic and her dad have been texting. Not just a polite, nice to meet you message. We're talking actual conversations. Her dad writing Nic first, Nic writing back with questions, curiosity, genuine interest. And the way she said it, you could tell even she was still processing it. She laughed like she couldn't believe it herself. Wait, you texted Nic? What did you even say? That's what she asked her dad when he told her. Because imagine finding out your boyfriend and your father are building a whole friendship without you being the middleman. That's not normal. That doesn't happen with casual relationships. That happens when someone is actually trying to understand where you come from. The comments exploded instantly. People weren't just shocked. They were emotional. Because for months, there'd been this back and forth about whether Nic and Olandria were real or just playing it up for the cameras, whether they'd last outside the villa, whether the chemistry was genuine or manufactured for content. And then this one detail flipped the entire conversation.
You don't text someone's dad if you're faking it. You definitely don't have their dad calling you, checking in, writing for you the way Olandria described. Her father wasn't just being polite. He was actively invested. And Nic, he couldn't wait to meet him in person. Not because he had to, because he genuinely wanted to. Olandria even joked about needing to be in the room when they finally meet because Nic has so many questions. He thinks her dad is one of the most interesting people ever. He wants to know his stories, his background, his experiences. That's not surface level. That's someone who cares about understanding the full picture of the person they're with. And here's what made it even more powerful. Olandria admitted she'd been giving Nic the rundown on her family, preparing him, making sure he understood the dynamics, the differences, the things that make her family unique. She said it like someone who's nervous but excited, like someone who knows this meeting matters because it's not just about impressing her parents, it's about two worlds coming together. What do you think about that? Does it change how you see their relationship? Drop your thoughts in the comments because this is just the beginning.
But the dad texts weren't even the most emotional part of the live. There was another moment that had fans absolutely melting. When Olandria visited Nic's hometown and met his family, she noticed something small but incredibly significant. A framed photo of her and Nic sitting right next to his grandmother's picture. Let that sink in for a second. Not tucked away somewhere, not hidden in a drawer or on a random shelf, right there next to one of the most important figures in his family. That's a statement. That's his family saying without words that she belongs, that she's not just a guest or a temporary fixture. She's part of their story now.
Olandria described the whole experience with this glow in her voice. She talked about how warm his family was, how funny, how easy it felt to be around them. She said they were just chilling, vibing, being themselves. No pressure, no performance, just genuine connection. And you could tell from the way she spoke that it meant everything to her. She even mentioned bonding with his family members individually, sitting with them, talking, laughing like they'd known each other for years. That's rare, especially in relationships that started on reality television, where everything is amplified and scrutinized. But somehow, away from the cameras, things felt even more real.
Then there was Greek Fest. Nic's family didn't just show up to support, they showed up as family, cheering, laughing, blending right into the crowd. And when Olandria described it during the live, her whole face lit up. It was so fun, she said, smiling like she was reliving every second. His family is such a vibe. I love hanging out with them. That's not something you can fake. That kind of joy, that comfort, it only comes when you feel genuinely accepted, when you know you're not being judged or analyzed, when you can just exist and be appreciated for who you are. And then she said something that really stuck with people. She couldn't wait for her own family and Nic's to finally meet. She talked about how different their backgrounds are, how chaotic it might be, but how exciting that makes it. Because it's not about everything being perfect or matching. It's about two families choosing to embrace those differences and make something beautiful out of it. For fans who've been following since the villa, this was the moment it became undeniable. This isn't a showmance anymore. This is real life unfolding in real time. Now let's talk about something that completely dismantles the fake narrative. The way Nic shows up for Olandria behind the scenes. Because according to her, every single time Nic lands a modeling gig or a brand deal, he doesn't just celebrate his own win, he immediately tries to find a way to bring her in. One thing I can say about Nic, Olandria explained during the live, any and every opportunity he ever has, he always tries to find a way to give me that same opportunity. She said he'll reach out to companies and ask if they'd be open to collaborating with her, if she could model alongside him, if she could have her own line. He's constantly thinking about how to put money in her pocket. And here's why that matters so much. In a space where so many couples secretly compete, where jealousy and comparison can ruin relationships, Nic is doing the exact opposite. He's elevating her. He's making sure she wins too. That's not just romantic. That's partnership. Olandria said it herself. She never feels like there's competition between them. And that's so important in the influencer world where one person's success can sometimes feel like the other person's failure. But with them, it's different. They're building together, celebrating together, winning together.
And it doesn't stop with Nic. His entire family operates the same way. Olandria mentioned how they're always fighting to make sure she gets compensated, that she's recognized, that she's valued just as much as he is. They're not just accepting her, they're actively invested in her success. Just having a partner and his family back him to make sure I'm financially good too, she said, it's a feeling I can't even describe. I feel so welcomed. I feel so seen. That line hit different. Because feeling seen isn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It's about someone paying attention to what matters to you. It's about being valued, not just as a partner, but as an individual with your own dreams and ambitions. And clearly, that's exactly what Nic and his family are giving her. It's the kind of support that builds foundations, not just for relationships, but for futures. And when you see a couple actively lifting each other up instead of dimming each other's light, that's when you realize this isn't just a connection. It's something built to last.
Quick pause, because if you're still here watching, that means you're just as invested in this story as I am. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because Nic and Olandria's journey is far from over, and you're definitely going to want to stay updated. All right, back to the story. So we've talked about family, but what about friends? Because that's another layer that proves how real this connection is. During the live, Olandria gushed about Nic's friends. She talked about meeting them, how welcoming they were, how they immediately made her feel like she belonged. All of Nic's friends are so sweet, she said. They were like, oh, you should come back to Florida. Let's hang out. Let's do something. I love how inviting they are. And then she said something that really stood out. Nic's friends remind her of her own, down-to-earth, genuine, childhood friends who've stuck around because the bond is real. That's significant because you can tell a lot about someone by the company they keep. And when both people in a relationship have solid, grounded friend groups, it says something about their character. It means they value loyalty. They value authenticity. They're not just chasing clout or surrounding themselves with people who serve a purpose.
After the live ended, the internet did what the internet does. It exploded. But this time, the energy was different. Instead of doubt and speculation, there was celebration. Comment sections turned into full-on party lines. People stitching clips, replaying moments, manifesting their future together like they were watching a rom-com in real time. I told y'all this was real, one comment read. They look happier every time we see them. Another said, okay, so what's the dress code for the ceremony? People were already making wedding jokes, planning hypothetical guest lists, debating color schemes. And while it was funny, it also showed a shift. Fans weren't just entertained anymore, they were invested. Of course, a few skeptics remained. That's the internet. There's always going to be someone doubting, questioning, looking for cracks in the foundation. But even some of those voices started softening, because it's hard to call something fake when families are texting, friends are blending, and photos are being framed next to grandmothers. What became clear through all of this is that Nic and Olandria have grown individually. They're not the same two people we met in the villa. They've learned how to move with intention, how to protect their relationship while still letting fans feel included. It's a delicate balance, but somehow they're pulling it off with grace.
You can see it in the way they talk now. Slower, more thoughtful, less about proving something to anyone and more about just living their truth. They've stopped trying to convince people. They're simply existing in their reality and letting that speak for itself. And honestly, that's what fans connect to most. Not the highlight reels or the perfectly curated posts, but the quiet confidence, the peace between them. Because you can fake chemistry for a while, but you can't fake peace. You can't fake the kind of comfort that comes through in unscripted moments. There's also this deeper realization happening among viewers. Even if this story doesn't end with wedding bells or forever promises, it doesn't make what they have any less real. People grow, circumstances change, but that doesn't erase the love that existed. And right now, what they're building together is undeniably genuine. Olandria said it herself. She feels seen, supported, valued, not just by Nic, but by his entire circle. And that's what matters. Not the grand romantic gestures or the viral moments, but the consistent, everyday actions that prove someone cares. So why does Nicolandria's story hit different than most reality show couples? Why are people who usually roll their eyes at Love Island relationships suddenly rooting for these two? It's because they've done something rare. They've made people believe again, not through over-the-top declarations or dramatic social media posts, but through small, consistent actions that add up to something real. The family integration, the private texts, the mutual support, the way they speak about each other when they think no one's really paying attention. Most reality show couples struggle the moment cameras stop rolling. The chemistry fades, the effort disappears. Usually, by the time reunion episodes air, half the couples have already called it quits. But Nic and Olandria seem stronger outside the spotlight than they ever were inside it. And maybe that's the real secret. They're not performing for anyone anymore. They're not trying to prove the doubters wrong or win over the haters. They're just building something together, one day at a time, one family dinner at a time, one supportive opportunity at a time. The fact that their backgrounds are so different actually works in their favor. It would be easy to stick with what's familiar, to only date within your own world, but they're choosing to bridge those differences, to learn from each other, to let their families and friends mix and create something new. Andrea talked about how excited she is for that chaos, for the moment when her family and Nick's finally sit down together. She knows it's going to be a sight to see, but she's not nervous about it. She's thrilled, because those differences aren't obstacles. They're opportunities. And that's what makes this love story so relatable. It's not perfect. It's not fairy tale polished. It's messy and real and full of the kind of moments that don't always look good on camera, but feel right in your heart. It's late night text with your partner's dad. It's being invited back to hang with friends you just met. It's seeing your photo next to someone's grandmother and knowing you've been accepted into something bigger than just a relationship. It's the small things that no one thinks to fake because they're too mundane, too everyday, too real. And that's exactly why they matter so much.
Because in a space filled with breakups, drama, and disappointment, Nic and Olandria represent hope. They represent the possibility that sometimes reality TV can lead to something real, that connections formed under cameras and producers and manufactured dates can evolve into actual love. And whether they last forever or just for this season of their lives, they've already accomplished something important. They've reminded people that love isn't about perfection, it's about effort, consistency, showing up, choosing each other even when it's not convenient or trending. All right, before we wrap this up, one last thing. If you've made it this far, you're clearly invested in this story just like I am. So do me a favor and subscribe if you haven't already, because this journey is still unfolding, and trust me, you're going to want to be here for whatever happens next with Nicolandria and the whole Love Island crew. At the end of the day, Nic and Olandria's story isn't about proving anyone wrong.